Hello, and welcome to today's USC Viterbi Live featuring Dr. Stephen Liu. My name is Tiffany Tay, and I am the Executive Director of Alumni Relations and Annual Giving here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. We started this Viterbi Live series at the start of the pandemic stay-at-home order to bring timely, relevant research to our engineering community. And I hope you were able to join us for a few. If you weren't, no worries, they have all been recorded and are available to you at our online events series page, which we will post in the chat box for you. Now, I am very excited to introduce our featured speaker and topic. I'm particularly interested in this area, as I'm sure many of you are, because you or someone in your family has been impacted by remote learning and classrooms. Dr. Liu is here to bring a unique perspective on how this has gotten a bad reputation and actually can provide an opportunity for even greater resilience and creativity if applied correctly. Dr. Liu is the David Packard Endowed Chair of Professor in Manufacturing Engineering here at USC Viterbi. He directs the Viterbi iPodia Global Education Program and the Master of Science in Product Development Engineering Program. He is the founding director of Impact Research Laboratory at USC, where new theories and technologies are being developed to support the engineering collaboration via negotiation paradigm. Dr. Liu's current research and teaching interests are in design thinking, collaborative engineering, and technological innovation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephen Liu.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
Yes. Thank you, Tiffany. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Stephen Liu. I'm going to share with you a very interesting development that actually took place at Viterbi School almost 10 years ago. And it turns out that at that time, we were a little bit ahead of the world. But due to the pandemic, which turned the world upside down, and finally, everyone catch up, the world is catching up on us. So I'd like to really share with you this long journey that Viterbi has taken to innovate in online education. And I will explain to you how this new normal can actually really become the new normal after the pandemic. Now, I was told I'm supposed to give like 30 to 40 minutes presentation. Then we can follow with question and answers. Unlike our presidential debate, I do welcome interruption. So if you have any question during any point of my presentation, feel free to send a question through chat, and Tiffany will inform me, and then I will be able to answer the question. And there will be a no mute button, as I promised you. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you the program called iPodia. Now, I want you to remember this word after the iPodia. It's called Learning Together for a Better World. And then we'll come back at the very end so that you can really be convinced that if we can have our next generation learn together to all become classmates, the world will become a better place for all. So let me first explain to you my view of why the higher education must be transformed. And here we are talking about fundamental transformation rather than simply a gradual tweaking of our curriculum or our coursework. The whole structure has to be completely transformed. So here's why. Now, if you just look at what happened to higher education over the past half century, and here I will show you a plot that indicate the rate of change of demand of education. How many kids want to come to the school? How many of them want to get a degree to find a good job? And versus the rate of improvement of the education technology, all the way from online learning, distance learning to the MOOCs. And all this trend will be plotted against time, okay? So if you look at before 2000, this is how the demand and supply of education market indicates, where you have a very rapid increase of the demand. A lot of kids wanted to come to school, and the supply pick up, but very slowly. So if you see a market with this trend, then certainly if the trend continue in the next 10 years, you're gonna make a lot of money, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of even private enterprise started to invest it in education. And you know, the University of Phoenix, they started during this period of time. and they actually it's an open stock company. So now there's a lot of hope that education industry, education market is going to be very large market with a lot of profit. Unfortunately, the history didn't turn out to be that way. What happened? If you think about what happened, particularly in 2008, what happened is we have the economic crisis. And the result of that, one of the results of that is the demand for education suddenly dropped. In the meantime, there's another major development that is during that 10 years period, there's a lot of technology being introduced into education. You know, we started with radio broadcasting, then we went to satellite, then we went to internet, then all this cloud computing allowed us to share the courseware around the world. So there's a lot of increase of the supply of education. So you can see this supply demand line did not happen according to the prediction. And then the interesting thing is, if you look at the trend based on this new trend, based on this new situation, you're going to see after 2010, you can see the education market is completely flipped. It changed from the undersupply market to oversupply market. In other words, our ability to deliver courseware is now way over the actual demand of students who want to take this courseware. So now, if you know economics, this is really a market that cannot sustain itself. Something fundamental must happen. Otherwise, the market will not be there. That's why I believe after 2008, a lot of university has started to think about what will be our future. How can we fundamentally transform the education market so we can continue to be a valuable participant of our young generation's future? Now, this chart is very interesting because when you see the supply-demand interact on any market, this is exactly the best opportunity for breakthrough innovation. Because I teach innovation, I help companies do product innovation, and often we'll look at the supply-demand relationship on each market to decide on when and how you should do innovation. So this intersection point, which happened right after 2008, indicating that the education market must be transformed. The question now is how? How are we going to transform that? And here I already said this is a strategic inflection point, right? So once you pass the strategic inflection point, and you must do something fundamentally different. Now, what happened is now we come to the COVID-19 crisis. Now that further exposed the current problem with our education, with the structure we offer the education to our students. So this COVID crisis actually help us to really see the reality faster so that we can really make the commitment that things has to be changed. And once we come to the new normal, after we went through this pandemic, and you're going to see the whole landscape of higher education will be completely different. So now let me introduce you my view, what could be the new normal after this transformation. In order to find new normal, you have to first identify what will be the new demand. This demand has to be new beyond what you currently offer to your students. Now, in this project, the iPodia project, we specifically target a demand which we believe is going to be very important, which is not currently satisfied by our program. That is, if you look at our current program, we focus most of our resources to do lecture. We lecture students on the content of some subject. Then we test them, then we give them a certificate. Now, this kind of content lecture, frankly speaking, most of them can be automated, can be put online. And most of them have already been online free of charge. So if we continue to satisfy this demand, which already become free, we will have no future. So the new demand we want to satisfy is something very important for a young person to be successful in this global world, which we call contextual understanding. What is context? Content is something you can write down, you can put in a textbook, you can describe, and then you can teach someone. Context is different. Context is all the relevant information that makes sense of the content. So if you want to get a good score, you probably need to know content. But if you really want to be able to use what you learn in the real world situation, you must know the context. Particularly in the global world, any success innovator must have the global context, which can only be obtained if you have a chance to reach out to someone across the world and try to interact with these different people. So you will broaden your perspective, you will expand your understanding of the content material. So that is contextual understanding. Now, through this interaction with people in different parts of the world, you will also develop mutual understanding of each other. And that relates to what I said earlier. Learning together can lead to a better world. So the question now is, okay, this is our new demand. This is what we think will be the new normal after pandemic. How are we going to do that? And I believe the program we started almost 10 years ago called iPodia can be such transformative effort. So let me explain to you, let me show you how I believe the world has been transformed or can be transformed. And I think there's a 3-step you can transform the world. First, you connect something. Second, you change what people used to do. You do something new in this connected situation. And then you can start to create a lot of things which was not even thinkable. It was unthinkable, it was not possible. So these 3 steps, actually, I can tell you is what happened in the computer world exactly over the past 60 years. So at the beginning, we have desktop, right? And then we have the network to connect to desktop computer. If you remember half century ago, and when you connect to computer with a wire, and people laugh at you, say, what are you doing? And we've been doing very well on each desktop computer. Why do you want to connect to computer? And the connection is so slow. But you know what happened? That simple connection, half century later, completely changed the world. Why? Because once people start to connect each other, they will do different things on computer. So rather than doing local computing, they start to use computer as a communication gateway. As a result, it creates a complete different new virtual world. And that's what the world we're living in today. And this kind of transformative change, if you do it right, it will take half century, it will happen. And as technology become more advanced, it will happen even quicker and quicker. So this is what we believe, that education transformation can happen exactly the same way. And the way we do it is, first, we connect separate classroom. Remember, they connect separate computer, right? And now we have all the classroom around the world on different campuses. How about we use the internet infrastructure to connect them together? And once we have this connected classroom, how about we try to have students in different classrooms to interact with each other so they can create a contextual understanding rather than simply lecture them with the content material. Again, this is change what you do in the connected classroom. And once you have this complete different activity in the connect classroom, and you can then generate a lot of new opportunity. Now, the new opportunity we generated in this connected classroom, we call iLearning. And we believe iLearning will be the new normal for the future world. And I'm going to explain to you what is iLearning and what iLearning can do in the future world as a new normal. So iLearning basically is the combination of 3 new things. We have a new platform, we have a new pedagogy, then we have a new program between universities. The first thing you have to realize is the difference between iLearning and e-learning. Everybody understand what is e-learning, right? E-learning basically focusing on coursework. They try to digitize coursework. They try to distribute coursework. And because technology is used to enlarge the distance of delivery of coursework, So e-learning also relates to distance education. And coursework is based on uniformity. In other words, you want to have a standard courseware. You want to make sure everyone in different end of the world receive the same coursework. And that's e-learning. However, I-learning is completely different. I-learning want to focusing not on the uniformity, but on the differences of the learner, so that they can bring their different understanding of the subject together to enlarge everyone's understanding. So I-learning is based on two premises. The first premise is people who are thinking different from us, they are not our enemy. They are actually our teacher. And I'm sure with today's very divisive environment, everybody should, and this is so valuable that we need to make sure we appreciate the differences, right? And this appreciation must begin from school. The second thing is, as you know, internet has connected the whole world. On one hand, this is good. Everyone have a platform to express their own idea. On the other hand, this really increase the diversity of our voice. Everyone has different opinion. And if you look at all the social networking today, and they try to group people who are like-minded, and then they try to promote different kind of extreme ideas so that people can stay with their group to increase their traffic flow. And all these things make the world very chaotic. How do we deal with that chaos? So our thinking is, rather than treating the diversity as a problem, which is getting bigger and bigger, how about if we turn this table around? Let's try to use diversity as a resource in our learning so that we can all benefit from the increasing diversity. So with these two assumptions, we started a program called I-learning. And I-learning is different from e-learning. It is learning from diversity. So there are several several challenges we have to meet to do I-learning. First is, how do you actually utilize diversity in the classroom? I mean, we know diversity has always been an important subject on campus, right? And so far, we have all been dealing with the student diversity as an administrative challenge, right? Try to do something to balance the quota. Now, there must be a positive way to do that. Can we utilize the diversity in a more positive way? That's number one challenge. And number two challenge is, suppose we're able to utilize diversity as a resource. Is there a way we can actually increase the diversity in classroom rather than minimize the diversity, or rather than try to balance the diversity? How can we increase diversity beyond any single classroom, any single campus? And then how do we actually deploy this? How do we actually make this happen in a real world situation where we now have separate university, each control their own curriculum? How can we change this? So based on these three challenges, we have deployed three different solutions. The first is we have a new pedagogy, which we call learning from diversity. I'm going to explain to you what is this new pedagogy. The second one is we have a new platform, and the platform uses the internet to connect the classroom together, become one classroom. So this is called Classroom Without Border. And then we have a new program, which we have multiple institutions sign up the agreement so that all their students can take the same course in this Classroom Without Border and receive the credit from their own institution. And this is a new arrangement, which is very different from the current business structure of university. So let's look at each of these very quickly. The first thing is how do you learn from diversity? How do you turn diversity as a resource rather than a burden? So let me show you this cycle of I-learning, okay? So suppose you have 7 days a week, and suppose your course is on day 7 at the end. So your learning cycle starting from day 1. What do you do in day 1? In day 1, the teacher will post all the content material, the slide, the video, the reference paper, all the content material for the coming week online. So students who log in from different part of the world can all study this. And students will have 2 days to study this material. And then after they study, they will have to answer a set of questions. Now, those questions are very interesting because they are not quiz questions. If it's quiz question, then you have a right and wrong answer, you can grade them. No, we are not going to ask quiz question. Rather, we design the question in an open-ended form to solicit students' different viewpoint about the material they just study at home. So we have questions like, do you agree with this? What do you think about this point? And students can answer all these questions online after they study at home. And then we have something very interesting. We have artificial intelligence algorithm, which we can look at all the different feedback from all the students, then automatically find out 5 or 6 students whose answers are most different from each other and put them into a cohort. Then they will have 2 days to engage into online discussion. And when they see each other online, they know why they are together because their opinion are most different. We can also use algorithm to identify which topic they have the most different opinion, so they will have more focused, more meaningful discussion. Now, 1 day before the real class, the teacher want to look at all the discussion material and try to figure out, is there anything that we need to focus further in the live class? Because some of the concept has already been agreed upon by all the students, there's no point to repeat. And some of the idea that students just cannot understand, they will have a different opinion and become more diverge. So you will then have to bring the subject out to have more exercise during the live class. And then finally, at the end of the cycle, you gather all the students log into the connected classroom, and then you have a chance to have them directly interact with each other. So that will complete the whole learning from diversity cycle, which we call 24/7 cycle. And then right after the live class end, and you start the next cycle. So this is the way we can clearly utilize the learner diversity as a learning resource. Okay, so what you do is you want to have students study content first at home. Then you want to group them based on their different idea of the content. And then you want to put them together, make sure they talk to each other to generate a contextual understanding from their different viewpoint. And then you connect the classroom for everyone get together and move to the next cycle. So this is a learning from diversity cycle. And this is our classroom without border. Now, this is an old picture. And we have a large screen in the front. We interconnect here. We have 4 different classrooms connected in Asia. And we have classroom connected in different locations around the world so that students and USC in the real classroom are able to see each other on the screen. They will also be able to see each other on laptop to talk to each other. And then the teacher will lead the whole interconnect classroom for discussion. So this is our Classroom Without Border platform. And then we have the multi-institutional program, which we call the iPodia Alliance. Now, the iPodia Alliance is a consortium which we now have 14 universities, and it is based on the equal participation, revenue neutral, and no joint degree. We only offer joint courses, not joint degree. And so far, we have 14 leading universities in 5 different continents. And this gives you the largest student diversity in the world. So that when you have the group together for cohort discussion, they really can help each other to expand their view of the world. Now, the reason we only have 14 is because during the first period of time, we really want to have a more controlled environment so we can really understand the do's and don'ts. After 10 years, we now already know the know-how, and we are now in the stage of replicating this idea more widely to quickly expand this idea to many other places in the world. So let me summarize what iLearning can do. Remember, you connected things together, people start to do different things, then you end up with new opportunity, right? The first thing we call global education. That is, students now are able to enjoy global learning from local campus directly. This does not replace travel, but this will allow the student to engage in global learning even while they are studying on campus. The second one we call diversity education. We are now able to push students of very different background. For example, we now have joint courses with Florida A&M University, Jackson State University. They are primarily Black, historically Black college and university. And their students come from very different background than USC student or German student, Israeli students, and they become the teacher to each other. And we are also working with university in Africa and try to have our students be able to work with theirs and find a very simple, cheap, on-the-ground solution for their healthcare problem. So there's a lot of opportunity that you can piece together students from different backgrounds to enrich everyone's educational experience. The next one is called education diplomacy. Now you can tell the world's really become very divisive, right? Seems like everybody hate each other. But we truly believe that if we can have the young generation become classmates, the world become better place. For example, we have Technion from Israel. We have Qatar University from Qatar. They are taking courses together. And we have students from Beijing, China. And we have students from Taipei, Taiwan. And they taking courses together for almost 7 years now. And I was told 2 couples now are getting married. And this is really a power of learning together, which I believe is a very, very important thing for university to take on. And the next one is really the competence education, because what you teach students in this kind of course is how do you work together with people who think different from you. This is not your content knowledge. This is your skill. This is your competence, which will make you a leadership, which will give you a competitive advantage over other students, okay? Currently, we're working together with the GCSP program with the National Academy of Engineering, which Dean Yours has started. So we are trying to work with GCSP scholar and using this kind of learning model as a way for them to really become global scholar. So now look at the COVID-19. COVID-19 certainly turned the world upside down. It gave a lot of challenges, right? Nobody was really prepared for that. So suddenly we have to move all the on-campus education to online learning. So there's a lot of challenges, like the technical challenge, but we believe the most important challenge is how do you continue to support the student engagement experience? Because the reason they study on campus, the reason you want to interlink different campus is so that they will have the opportunity to bounce with each other and they can really take advantage of this interaction to enrich everyone's experience. But now if they have to study remotely, how can you be sure that remote learning will not become isolated learning? If it's become isolated learning, then the value of education would degrade a lot. So this is really what happened in the past. In the past, when we delivered the course before the pandemic, when we deploy the course, we have a big slide on the screen, then we have a little camera view of the teacher. And this is a typical distance education program that we've been doing for years. So what happened after the COVID? Everyone moved to online, right? Many schools use this Zoom meeting as we do now. Now, if you have a Zoom meeting with like 10 people, it's okay. But imagine if you have to look at the computer screen, which has 100 grids, these small grids. Each grid show different talking head on the different background. It is totally incomprehensible in terms of learning, right? So this has really been a very bad, although it's very convenient, but it is a very bad idea and really discourage students' engagement. So everybody just log into Zoom and stare at the computer for a while. Some students get bored, they turn off their camera and they post their picture there and nobody knows what's going on behind. So this kind of online education using the conference platform, video conference platform, has been the current normal, okay? So how can we do better? So this is what iPodia has been working on with Microsoft. And the reason is, if you look at the iPodia situation in the past, we basically have this cyber physical infrastructure. In other words, we have physical infrastructure, we have different classrooms on different campuses. Then we have a cyber infrastructure which interconnect different classrooms, right? But now that physical infrastructure has to be completely moved to the cyber infrastructure. So how do we continue to have student interaction? So the idea is, how can we create not only a classroom without border, but a virtual classroom without border? So this is really the real classroom, okay? This is before we have online delivery. And then this is the iPodia situation. We have the cyber physical infrastructure. And this is the current Zoom education, right? So what we have done is we're working with Microsoft to deploy a new feature they call Together Mode from their team platform. And this is what we can do. We can actually grab each student's image as they log in. Then we can place them virtually in a common background, like a classroom background, so that we will have a uniform background. Everyone can see each other as they were sitting in the classroom. And as a matter of fact, they can even raise their hand to visually touch each other, although they cannot feel it, but they can visually touch each other. So you can see a lot of very interesting interaction. Now recall, we have multiple classrooms interconnected, right? So the interesting thing is, if you are able to see the students in the virtual world, you are now able to swap them. So you can put a German student right next to a Chinese student. You can put an Israeli student next to a Qatar student. And you can put students from different parts of the world all in one common platform. They can then interact with each other as if they are truly together. So this is really the practice we are now proving. Now we are currently deploying these things to 2 iPodia classes. And so far the student reaction has been very good. And they really enjoy this kind of virtual environment much, much better than the Zoom kind of interface. And this is really the best way to, one of the good way to encourage student engagement with each other. So in the future, we're developing a new engagement service where you have students from every place and you can sit them the way you wish. You can put different chairs for different students according to the roster. And you can also use computer to monitor their reaction, because now everybody's face is showing on the screen. And for example, you can tell this student is paying attention and this student is losing the attention. These 2 students missed the class. So it's very easy for you to now monitor the class. So that is really something we have been doing. And so far, we believe this new environment is very good for students to enjoy their online learning experience, to become more engagement with the classmates around the world. So this is the new normal we are seeing now. As we said beginning, we actually been doing this or prepared for this long time. And now the pandemic has actually made the world catching up here. So with the virtual classroom we are currently developing, there are a lot of new possibilities, which really is to our surprise. And we didn't realize this actually have the new possibility, new opportunity, rather than simply just overcome the difficulty. The first one is, and this list is a random list, it's based on my own experience so far. And for example, you can easily recognize student name. I mean, I'm always bad in calling students' name. Imagine you have like 100 students from 5 different universities all together, it's just hard. But now in the classroom, we can easily recognize each student. This increase our interaction. And the second thing is very, very interesting. We are now very easy, we can organize breakout session. In the past, when you organize breakout session, you have to move students different corner of the classroom. When they start a discussion, they interrupt with each other and always take time. So you cannot do many of them. And now, because the virtual classroom, you can simply create a breakout session, a click of a button. Then students can immediately move to different conference room to talk to different people. And afterwards, they can immediately come back to the classroom to see everybody. So this kind of in and out become so quick, it becomes so easy. The next one, which is to my surprise, because right now with this virtual classroom, students can not only see each other, they can also actually chat with each other or chat with small group on the laptop. And this kind of multitasking in the past, when you teach in a real classroom, you really don't like it, right? You don't want a student really do anything else than listen to your lecture. But then we turned out that's really the reason why students getting bored, okay? So if you're letting students to actually busy with several different things, and they actually will have to put their all attention into the class. So again, this is a little bit counterintuitive, but this is what we find out. And next one is, this will really be good for students who are shy. Because if you put students different culture together, some of them more outgoing and they will always take the microphone. But if you can have students to put question and give feedback anonymously, and it will increase everyone's participation. And the next one is, as I already showed it to you, you can use computer algorithm to do face recognition to detect the level of attention of all the students right away. And then you can focusing on the student who lose attention, right? And the next one is you can strategically guide their peer interaction. For example, you can look at their pre-class answer, and then you can use algorithm to group those people with a specific purpose for one discussion. So you can now much better, you can guide the student discussion with a purpose much better. And next, you can then collect a lot of data because all this interaction occur online, and you can create a big database, and then you can use machine learning to draw the inside of each student's learning profile. Then you can really create highly personalized learning environment for the future. This is in the future. We have not done that yet. And the next one also is very interesting. And you know, there's a major research in gamification. That game is fun. Students always want to do it. How can we actually design the course interaction also as fun as a game, right? So all these things become possible as you move the whole infrastructure into the cyberspace. Some of them we have already experienced. Some of them we are in the process of developing together with our partner. So this is what I have to prepare to share with you. And I want to take this opportunity to invite everyone. I'm sure you all have interest in education, either as a direct customer or as an indirect customer who pays for the education. And we want you to really see how the future is going and how we are ready for the future. And right now we are in the process of creating a new initiative at Viterbi based on all the experience we have learned over the past 10 years from iPodia, and based on the new experience we have learned after the pandemic. And this new initiative is called the Viterbi Learner Space. We are going to create a space which has a state-of-the-art technology to enable interaction between students in a very different way than what the classroom can be. So we don't even want to call this like a electronic classroom or digital classroom. We don't want to call classroom because the classroom has a very old connotation. We want to really create a space in the future which can use all the advanced software, hardware technology, sensor technology, so the learner can walk in that space, immediately put himself or herself into a world classroom to interact with anyone from different part of the world. And that will completely transform our campus as well as the future of education. So we invite you to join this historical opportunity. And this has been a long journey. And now time is right for us to make a real impact. If you have any question relates to what we just discussed feel free to send me the email or raise the question. And now I think I am about 40 minutes in, and we're ready for the question and discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Liu. That was absolutely fantastic. I love the interface of the students and the diagram of the students. That was really, really cool. So we had a couple questions come in regarding the maximum capacity of this virtual format. Assigning students to groups and cohorts for higher level courses makes sense, but how would this work for intro classes?
Okay. Good question. This is always a balance between quantity and quality, okay? Now, in theory, when you have a virtual environment, the quantity is unlimited. On the other hand, for the sake of interaction, if you want to increase the quality of interaction, you will then have to limit the number of participants in each group, right? So the way the challenge is, how do you balance these two? But the advantage is in the virtual environment, because you're organizing each participant almost just like a data point. You can easily create a highly organized hierarchical structure. So you have a big discussion group within which you have a small discussion group, within which you have a sub-discussion group, and then you can easily merge and change this hierarchy so that everyone can have enough interaction and the overall size of this class can also be bigger. But this is something I think we need to learn how to do it. The possibility, the technical possibility is certainly there. It just that now we're facing the opportunity to really have both quantity and quality. It will take us a while to learn how to take advantage of that.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Dr. Liu. Our next question is, in a classroom without borders, what are the language barriers and how do you deal with that?
Well, the answer is we don't deal with that. And so far we have used English as the common language. And so far we have no difficulty at all, because you'll be surprised that all the young people around the world, if they are in higher education, and they have no trouble to speak English. Actually, in some countries, we see students speak much better English than their professors. Now, this does not mean that everyone can use English to communicate fully as their first language, right? So there's a possibility in the future. We have not started. There's a possibility in the future we can deploy the same model to different regions, which has the same language other than English. For example, there's a talk now we can deploy this model to, for example, between China, Taiwan, and Singapore and Hong Kong. And they can all speak Mandarin. And we can also deploy these things in Mexico, say, for example, and they can link together with several other countries in the region, which they all speak the same language, okay? So the answer is we have not seen language as a major barrier, but there are possibility to even go further to have this thing to be more language dependent, specific.
Perfect. So this question is interesting. Do you think this type of remote learning will replace in-person learning completely? And how will this affect the cost of education in the future?
Okay. I don't believe it will completely replace the in-person learning. For example, even in our iPodia courses, and if resources there, we always try to arrange overseas campus visit for all the students to get together in one place at the end of their study. But that's different than simply just travel around, because by the time they see each other, they have already studied with each other for the whole semester. And you can tell the dynamics of this in-person interaction is much, much better because they have already been worked together, right? So the number one is we're not trying to replace the in-person travel or the in-person learning. The advantage of this thing is we are able to put the global learning experience as the normal part of campus education for everyone. So you don't have to have special resource or privilege to travel. Even you go to your local campus, you are enjoying global learning all the time. Because we believe global learning should be the right of the many rather than the privilege of the few.
I absolutely agree. And as a follow-up to that question, you had mentioned that there are 14 schools right now participating in the multi-institutional program. So I imagine there are a lot of disciplines that are unique to all these countries and a lot of topics and content. So who determines which courses are taught? Yes.
Well, the agreement among these 14 universities are signed by their university leadership. So once this agreement is signed, any subject they offer in their curriculum As long as there are multiple mutual interests from other institutions, they can all get together to develop the course. In terms of who decides on what to teach, it's all democratic. In other words, if I'm a member of the Alliance, if I have a course on subject X, I will then reach out to other university liaisons through the Alliance and try to see who have the similar or complementary course related to this subject. Then the Alliance will help this group of faculty, because at the end, it's a faculty who decide on this. The faculty will decide on how to actually combine their resources, because some of these joint courses actually are taught by the team. For example, the course I offer on global innovation, I have partners from Technion Israel, from Aachen in Germany, and from University Patras from Greece. So students take these courses not only from different universities, they can also enjoy the different teaching style and expertise from different faculty. All these are decided mutually. And the idea is we're hoping that the schools who took several courses from such alliance can also contribute to equal number of such courses to the alliance. So this is almost like a frequent traveler program. So you accumulate the points and you can enjoy the privilege. And the important thing is so far, we follow this revenue neutral business model. In other words, everyone still pays tuition to their own university, okay? And we have some donation that we use to support the alliance operation. But if university want to participate in this, if there's some little investment of their classroom, they will have to pay themselves. We do not exchange money because we want to make sure these things can really be a new experience to benefit our student. Otherwise, very quickly end up arguing with prices, right?
Right. Okay, makes a lot of sense, and I really do enjoy that democratic approach. So we have two questions coming out regarding the rollout of this virtual classroom. The first is from Crystal in the audience. Do you think this model can apply to staff and administration meetings at USC instead of using Zoom? Or apply this to the public or private sector work environment for team collaboration across different locations?
Well, I think this is a better answer actually for a company like Microsoft to answer. My experience is yes. Because if you really look at what happened over the past 6 months after pandemic, it's very interesting. Everybody jumped to Zoom right away. Even though nobody likes it, everybody jump in. Why? Because it is simple and it is easy. On the other hand, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they all have their very sophisticated platform. And nobody uses it. Why? Because it is too much and it's hard. But after people get tired of Zoom, now we see we have this Zoom fatigue. And as people want to do more, and company like Microsoft, Google, and Facebook, they see a great opportunity. And that's why Microsoft is very anxious to working with us and try to create a new kind of support environment specific for different professions. In our case, it's for education. It could also be for training, as you said. And then the company will be able to enjoy a collaboration platform much richer than just Zoom. So this is actually a great business opportunity. We are just trying to penetrate the new world education. I'm sure the same opportunity exists for different kind of profession. And I'm sure all these large companies are working hard on this.
I agree. So we have another question from Cindy. Are you working with K-12 to relay lessons learned and techniques as they apply to teaching online or combine in-person online classes during the pandemic?
Very interesting question. As a matter of fact, in theory, this kind of learning together, it should happen the earlier the better. Okay? As a matter of fact, there has been a virtual and venture capital company talking to us, trying to create such a model for kindergarten. Now, imagine you can send your kids to kindergarten and where she can study play with all the kids around the world. Come on, I mean, this is such a valuable experience, right? And imagine what kind of person they can become in the future. So the earlier the better. And we are very hopeful that after we have done this experiment and we already know the do's and don'ts, we'll be very happy and open to work with anyone, particularly from K-12 or even younger, and to see how this model can be deployed into their particular part of education. We are very interested in doing that.
That's fantastic. All right, next question is, the diversity algorithm seems very critical and powerful. Does USC own this?
The diversity algorithm was developed by ourselves. And the reason we developed this algorithm is because we clearly see that the world has become more chaotic because of social networking algorithm. You see, if you look at our diversity algorithm, it is almost exactly the opposite than what Facebook is doing, right? Because if you join Facebook, they will put together people who think likely have the same interest together. And then the more you talk to each other, more you like each other and you hate the rest of the world. And we wanted to have a way to counter that. And we believe the way to counter that is start from education. If we have students to have the ability to listen to different opinion, to appreciate different opinion, and to see different opinion actually is a helpful thing, I'm pretty sure the world will be better than that. Now, speaking of the intellectual property right, and so far we have not pursued that, but we have already received very interesting inquiry from Facebook, because they know for sure that their business model is facing a big problem very soon. Not because of their monopoly alone, not because their data privacy, but because they are creating social they are creating social chaos. That is a major challenge they must face. However, because the business model they are in, they cannot suddenly switch to the other way. And that's why they have expressed strong interest to work with us to see whether, while they are trying to generate revenue from advertisement, and by putting people who have the same interest together, they can also create a more meaningful education group which people can teach each other because of the difference. So this is yet to be decided. We have not pursued any specific revenue yet.
Understood. Thank you. Yes, I too hope that social chaos caused by Facebook, Instagram, Twitter gets alleviated in the future soon too. So our last question comes in from Allison. How does the virtual classroom facilitate student-to-student interactions and collaborations? And how do students dispersed over a large area become familiar with one another and develop relationships that get them comfortable with collaborating?
Well, this is an important question, because not only you have to provide the infrastructure, the pedagogy to enable students to interact, to collaborate. Students themselves should also realize that this is a normal part of the learning. Because if you look at where the student come from traditional background, from traditional course, right? They think their job, they're just sitting there taking lecture, right? Fill the homework, take the exam. And then all this discussion afterwards, it become extra. And now you have to really make sure when they take such courses, very quickly, they can turn this old thinking around. And they can see interaction is the main part of your learning, and you must be well prepared for interaction before you even showed up. So this is our experience. In the iPodia course, we often find out at the very beginning, for example, the first 1/3 of the semester, it is really hard. It's not because the material is hard, it's because changing students' perception of the importance of interaction is very hard. You have to almost make them unlearn the old thinking and then engage and enjoy the interaction. However, we find out always that in the middle part of the class, and suddenly they start to see, this is really the fun part of learning. And then we find out at the end, everyone wants to ask for more interaction. And you hardly have time to stop them. So the lessons we learn here is this will take some time to reverse. So technology development, pedagogy development can be done quickly, but changing the behavior in terms of the behavior of the teacher and the behavior of the student will take some time. And that is why we believe the best thing is to start this experiment early and start with a very focused, a small sample, and then learn the experience within your institution and then move forward. And that is going to be a challenge, but we believe it can be overcome.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, and actually corresponds to the last comment that came into the chat, which was, this is very incredible. This could solve so many problems by bringing people early on and educating them. So that was all really, really wonderful and critical stuff. So thank you again so much, Dr. Liu, for this fantastic presentation. It was
Thank you.
Pleasure, of course. It was a pleasure hearing from you and learning just a little bit about the very critical work you're doing right now. To all of our participants, thank you so much for tuning in. This webinar was recorded and will be available within 24 hours at the online event series page. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy your weekend. Be well, stay safe, and as we say here at USC, fight on. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.